podcast, where we discuss fertility and natural family planning with our friends. Today's guest is Kelly Breaux. Kelly is a writer, author, and president of Red Bird Ministries, a Catholic, pro-life, pro-family grief support ministry that serves bereaved families who've experienced child loss of any age and circumstance. Kelly and her husband Ryan endured the losses of 4 children, and during that time, Kelly found very few resources to support bereaved parents. The Breaux found their ministry was a way of living out the calling to be open to life. Over time, she and her husband were able to mend and restore their relationship, and they wanted to share that with other bereaved parents. Welcome, Kelly, to the PeakDay podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Would you say that the loss of a child is a burden carried silently by most couples?
Yes, absolutely. I know, especially in early loss, a lot of people have not shared that news with anyone. So sometimes people don't even know they're pregnant before they're not. And so, how do you enter that conversation with, I was pregnant, now I'm not? You're carrying that grief. So, there is a large amount of people that are carrying it very silently. But even if you've experienced a living child, um, the pain surrounding loss is so intricate and intimate, and it's very, very heavy. So a lot of the times our families struggle with sharing the brokenness of their heart with people who don't understand that pain. Um, it's almost like this. They struggle with vulnerability because sometimes when they are vulnerable, because people don't know what to say, they say nothing, and so then they stop talking about it. So there is that those factors. And then of course too, sometimes the church has over spiritualized things that were very human, and so we have to be able to allow our people to be human first and help to raise that saint. So like really being intentional about listening to people, that's so helpful whenever we're serving.
So I read a quote from you. You said that grief is a broken heart that is held within the body, and our spiritual life must be part of the process of healing. How does one process grief through faith? How can one process their grief with God?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Catholic anthropology, we believe that we are body, mind, and soul. It's integrated. We cannot separate our healing journey into and compartmentalize it into 3 spaces. We're one. You have to process it together. I didn't know these things. And so, when we lost our son, I was only 25 years old. So there was this human immaturity, but also this spiritual immaturity. And if you'd asked me then, I would have told you that was absurd. I thought I had it under control, which I did not. I did not know. But it's so true, because healing really needs to be holistic. Otherwise, we have what I see as people only surviving and not thriving. And so I think the reason why I kind of separated it, because I was so mad at God, and I thought that I couldn't approach him because I was angry, because as a little girl, my mom used to always tell me, you don't question God, you accept, you offer it up. And I wanted to do none of that. It felt so awful, and I really struggled with who I was, with my identity as a beloved daughter. And it made me question really everything. And so, unbeknownst to myself, like I rejected God. He didn't reject me. But if looking back, starting from the beginning, including God in that healing journey, even though I was angry, not stopping talking to him and leaning into him, even though it felt so totally like I wanted to reject it. My body wanted to reject it. it's very necessary. And that's why I really do feel like it is a responsibility of the church to step in this space and speak truth over families who are experiencing loss, because um, in our culture these days, like even our beautiful counselors who are trying to help people are not allowed to talk about faith, and so there is a good chance that it's not brought up. um, and so like we see like this, the people that we have depended on, they tell me all the time, like, Kelly, we like I could lose my license. So there is this like real like travesty that we're in a space right now where the church has to step in and say, I'm here for you. Our mother church is a part of the healing journey, and to help people walk back, in through that process where we see the church as healer again.
With your experience with the ministry at this point, are there kind of logical general steps that you can recommend for somebody who has experienced a loss?
Yeah, so telling your story is a really good practice because there is scientific evidence that when you remove what you're thinking, either by verbalizing it or writing it down, it actually releases that from the somatic part of the brain. And so it helps with keeping that trapped. It helps to move it through. And then of course, like, finding similarities between stories. So like when we're walking with someone and someone says something, it like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened to me. But I couldn't form a sentence around how it felt. So like sharing stories amongst people, it helped me share my own story as well. That's a great first step. And also too, whenever you're in community, um, you don't feel so alone. And that's exactly where the devil wants to keep you, is in isolation, because then you can really, live in that turmoil of feeling like like God was not good, that he allowed this to happen, that he willed your child to die. This is all lies that I believed. Didn't understand actual will and permissive will, and I didn't have anybody to tell me any different.
Ryan, your husband, is a founder of Red Bird Ministries with you. What was his contribution to the development of the ministry?
Yeah, so early days of the ministry, one of the things that was really important to us was that um, couples needed to have support, because our marriage suffered tremendously. And I remember when we first went to the diocese, Father Halpin, he was a priest but also a counselor, and he told me, and he was like, I don't understand how this is going to work because men and women grieve so differently. And I was like, precisely so. They don't know how to have compassion and love one another in the different ways that they grieve. And each one of them, in their heads, they're carrying an individual cross when it is their cross, their child, and they need to yoke themselves together and walk. And so, as we were developing Redbird, like in the beginning, that was something that was so important to us, is helping couples um, to be able to thrive when loss enters their life and to yoke themselves together. And so, of course, Ryan contributed uh, with our couples workshop. He also helped to contribute with the grief of dads. And him and we co-facilitate our couples workshop together all the time. He is really, really supportive of the work that we do, but he still has a full-time job because his salary is what really pays our bills at home. So I do as much as I possibly can, and then he helps when he can.
Are grief and loss experienced differently by men versus women? And does one support a man through loss differently than women?
Yeah, so we know science says that men and women communicate differently. Women use more words, they're more empathetic, they love tenderness and like get to the point like of the heart, whereas men, and that's just like our Blessed Mother and Saint Joseph, Mary pondered in her heart. Joseph went to the workshop. Men use less words. They often don't want to talk about it. They want to build things, break things, put their grief into action, which was a problem in my marriage because I was at home for both Talon and Emma. So those were our living children that we lost. Both of those losses, I had a baby at home. So when Talon died, Emma was still in the NICU. They were twins. We lost them at 20. Well, we delivered them at 28 weeks, and he was 15 days old. So she was still in the NICU. So I still had another baby, and he would go to work every day. So I was home alone most of the time. And then with Emma, we have a daughter, Estelle. So she was 8 months old when Emma died, and so I had a baby at home. So I had nobody to talk to. So he would go to work, and when he got home, you don't want to talk to anybody. He'd want to go cut the grass. He want to go do things outside, and he didn't emote his grief in front of me because he was trying to protect me. But I saw that completely different. I thought that he didn't love our children like I loved our children because I couldn't function. And he was able to go to work. He was able, to play with Estelle. He was able to do the very thing that I couldn't do. So I thought there was something really, really wrong with me. But we never communicated what we were experiencing because we both really thought that we were trying to protect one another. And it really caused a lot of problems in our marriage. And so that's one of the things with our couples workshop, the first session, when we share our story, we talk about communication. If you communicate different, you're going to grieve different. That's bottom line. And it's not every couple does the man not do these things. He very well could be a griever, and he could emote his grief publicly. But typical, just norm, like from a lot of the families that we serve, men don't usually emote their grief in public. So Ryan would cry all the way to work, all the way home, and then he would put on his different hat, compartmentalize things so that he could be who he needed to be in the different situations.
So let's talk about Red Bird Ministry and the grief resources that you offer.
Yeah, so Red Bird, when we started out in 2018, it was very important to us to be peer led. And so that's kind of the approach that we have taken from the beginning. One of the things that I think I shared with you before we started recording was that I did do everything that the secular world said. As far as I saw a therapist, I went to group therapy, a group support. And there wasn't one thing that I found that was very helpful because it was either absent of God or people didn't really understand. And so Red Bird is peer led, but we bring in experts with us. So we invite spiritual directors along the journey with our families and Catholic counselors. And if our spiritual directors and our counselors are also families of loss, we can go so far with our families. And that's what we intend to do, is to be very intimate and intentional in our support. What this does for families, it really disarms them because like I was telling you before, my truth that was my counselor couldn't help me because she had not lost a child. And so I was not open to what she was saying. It wasn't because what she was saying wasn't exactly what I needed to hear. She was the expert. But where I was on my journey, I did not have the ears to hear, nor did my heart have the ears to hear. But when you have someone who has experienced that same loss, who has the professional experience to be able to help families, that's whenever we can go really, really far and help families to thrive again. And so that's what we do, is we get peers who are just ordinary people. We get peers who are spiritual directors. We get peers who are counselors and therapists. And we even have some clergy that work with us who have, their spouses died. They've gone to become a priest, and they know loss. Their spouses died. Some of them have also experienced the loss of a child in their earlier life. So forming really um, a team in each community that we work with of people who understand loss that deeply can help our families get really, really far. That way, um, they can believe that they will thrive again one day.
So I know that when a close family relative experienced a, a loss, a miscarriage, I was able to go on your website and I ordered something to be sent to her.
Yeah, so there's so much that we can offer. There's like if you go in there, sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, it's too much. Like I don't know where to go. But what we did is try to be very intentional about serving the family well. And so when you look at the website, you'll see there you can go if you're a church leader and you need resources to bring into the community. There's stuff there. Families of loss, there's a section there, and we also have that gift shop. So our gift shop has gifts that you can send to someone who's experienced a loss. There's also books that you can purchase to send them. Um, when a family is ready to be in group, you can even gift them a retreat or a workshop. Um, for families who have experienced loss, we have our app, we have printed resources, books. There's also blogs, podcasts. There's so much digital content that they can receive or download. And then for the church as a leader, we also have programs that they can implement in person in their community.
What would you recommend for somebody who is accompanying somebody else who's experienced a loss?
When it comes to doing, I think the hardest thing for us was keeping up with daily tasks. I did not want to fold clothes, nor wash dishes, nor grocery shop, um, especially because people see you in public. They want to ask about your loss. And I don't want to have a conversation while I'm at Walmart when I'm trying to hold my emotions together. Like that was very hard. So, grocery shopping, meals, that's all things that um, right away you can do. I had one mom um, of loss share that her friend came and like she put together a basket and had like light bulbs and like toothpaste and just like simple things that they would use, to get them through like maybe the first month or two. And that was so helpful. She just thought that was really, yeah, kind and caring. We've had one family that the Knights of Columbus cut their grass for 6 months. And they live in Texas, so grass grows a lot in Texas. They just took turns. Every week there was a different man on her front yard cutting her grass. And she said, like, they don't even know how helpful that was. That I didn't have to talk myself into go and cut the grass. Like it was just so powerful. Showing up to do simple things and don't ask people what do you need because they don't know what they need and they cannot their brain cannot sit there long enough to think of what they want to eat for supper, what they need done. Just go and just do it. There's also this like false concept or myth that, oh, I want to give them their space. um, to some degree or another, that's true right away. But typically within 30 days, the majority of everybody's families go back to work. So you can imagine, like after 30 days, especially if they have no family that live nearby, they don't have help anymore. We've had families that have gone over just so the mom could take a bath if they have young children. I mean, these are simple things. You don't have to have a therapy degree or be a grief expert to do just your Elizabeth, like when Mary went to Elizabeth, those simple little things that you can do just to be with the person who is suffering. And then for language, avoid using words like I understand what you're going through because even if you've experienced a loss, No two losses are the same. No two people grieve the same. No two people think the same. So just avoid using that. And when you don't know what to say, it's okay to say, I don't know what to say, but I love you and I'm here for you. And that is enough. And that's typically what they really want, is to know you care about them. And say their children's name, because many people forget or they're afraid to say it because they think that that family is going to cry. Well, saying my child's name is actually going to bring me joy, not acting like nothing ever happened. That makes me cry. And then also, too, like what we all try to do is emulate our Blessed Mother. Like, that's what she does for Jesus. She makes sure that we never forget that her son died on the cross for us to have eternal life. So ask your Blessed Mother, our Blessed Mother, for help, because that's what she does. She helps us to always remember, because um, they're part of that family's family for the rest of their life. That's what we believe. That's what our faith says. Um, and we should act like that. We should treat that family that same way.
So, Kelly, you have said that you found that your ministry was a way of living out the calling to be open to life. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. So we work with a lot of families who have like sh- shared this with us, and I kind of then I went back and I was like, oh yeah, that was me too. Again, sharing your story helps you to understand like things that families struggle with. And one of them is the fear of being pregnant again after loss. So a lot of our families that we work with will struggle with contraception, and we've even had a couple of our families that took it as a sign from God that they shouldn't have any more children and have sterilized, which further complicates the story because you're making a permanent decision in desolation, which is Ignatian spirituality. I think it's rule 5 or 6. Like it just further complicates things because the way that you feel now is not the way you're going to feel forever. And some of our families have come to a place where they desire to conceive again and they're not able to because of that permanent decision. Even if they try to reverse it, it's not always successful. Um, and so um, I don't teach NFP because my husband and I like really, really struggle with infertility. So if you use my method, you probably get pregnant. But there are amazing NFP instructors that will walk with you to help you, because we understand like right after your loss might not be a good time for you to conceive, especially when you're in postpartum depression. You know, a lot of people experience that. So try to get your body more regulated so that you can enter into pregnancy with more of a healthy mentality, and not making it a means to an end. Because we've had some families that they experience loss and then they get pregnant the next month, and then their whole 9 months are hard for them. Um, so I think having someone to walk with you through that process, to know when's a good time, and a good spiritual director to help you to make that decision for your family, um, is really, really important. And also to, like, for us who, we experience infertility, there is this there's this definitely heavy thing that some of our families do carry with, where they don't know if they'll ever get pregnant again when they lose. And that was kind of our story. So in between our third and fourth um, loss, um, there was a 10-year gap. And so I never thought I would be able to conceive again. So it complicates things a lot. So I guess my message to families: don't let fear control and steal you from joy, um, because you might desire to have another baby again. Um, and if you need time to process with a good spiritual director and an NFP instructor, like, that's okay too. Just take your time, and really like lean into the people that are willing to help you because I think there's so many people that do. They want to help.
How can the church help with the grieving process for a family?
When we are working with dioceses and parishes, one of the things that has come to mind is that um, less than 5% of parishes offer grief support in their communities, which is it's heartbreaking. I know that was a factor in my own diocese, um, and I understand too. Like you, the church sometimes follows trends when we're talking about evangelization of the culture, and whereas before, like through the way that people in the generations really addressed mental health and all that has a lot to do with it. But we are coming to a time where our younger generations, our families who are getting married right now and having babies, want to talk about these hard topics. So it's the time is of the essence, like we say. Our church has always been through history. There's been amazing saints that have risen through um, the right time for the right season, and so has like religious communities. And I feel like this is one of them. Like Red Bird is positioned very perfectly to be able to be in a space where we can talk about these things because people are more receptive to. And so the church really needs to lean into that as well and provide more opportunities for families to experience healing through the church. And especially again, what we shared about with the secular world where we have depended on being the professionals for grief are no longer talking about God. Our culture is not influenced by Christendom anymore. We're living in an apostolic world. People sometimes, don't even know when a religious, I was listening to Father Mark Mary Ames, he had on, his Franciscan friar habit, and he says someone in an airport, they think he's a ninja. Like, like that type of stuff. Like, we're living in a world where people sometimes don't even hear the word Jesus. And our universities are very much influenced by this culture. And those are the ones that are getting the education that was in the past done so well is not no longer that case. So the church has to be a voice to these families that are healing, that need healing.
And you, Red Bird Ministries, offers those resources for priests and parishes, which is beautiful.
Yeah, so we're trying to take the obstacle out of the way. In my own diocese, like when there was nothing that we could implement in my parish, I kind of was aggravated. I was like, all I'm doing is putting together PowerPoints and making things Catholic, spending all of my time doing administrative tasks when God had called me to serve families of loss. And so we provide leaders all of those resources. They don't have to pick a font. They don't have to create the video. It's all done. We hold we are in the Kennedy directory. We're approved by the USCCB. Our grief group holds its imprimatur. We are authentically Catholic, and also too with that controversial topic, open to life, and um, also too that is always typically an issue too with the ministry. Families carrying to term when they have an adverse pregnancy diagnosis. There's just so many complicated factors. Knowing the laws of your state with viability. I mean that if the church doesn't know those, then we don't know, when that we have to bury, when we should offer burial, even if it's before a certain time. So there's so many things that the church really needs to know to be able to pastorally serve families. We do have a program called the Good Shepherd that we it's a workshop that we offer to our clergy to help them to understand some of these big topics that can help them to equip them to pastorally support their families.
Thank you so much for joining me on the PeakDay podcast. And many blessings for your ministry and your continued service to people who really need a ministry for those who are grieving. So thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.